And so I'm here today to talk a little bit about the impact of new technologies on the future of our democracy and on experiments that are taking place all around the world to help us rethink our democracy and think about how we might do things differently. At the same time, I think everybody here would agree that things also feel like they're going in the wrong direction. That at the same time as we're seeing life expectancy increase for some, globally, for the poor, life expectancy is declining. Economic opportunity is declining when, as Oxfam tells us, 1% of the world's population controls 82% of its wealth. Our chances on this planet are doomed if we don't reduce our warming faster and by more. And then there are those, of course, who tell us that the robots will eat all our jobs, we'll all be out of work. And the prognoses, of course, are worse for people in the developing world and in certain industries and sectors. But we don't know what's going to happen, is the real truth, as a result of some of these new technologies like automation and robotics, big data, and also collective intelligence, again, that we'll talk more about today. But they're causing us to feel very, very unsettled. And in part, that's not merely a sense of perception, it's a reality. The reality that our public institutions and our private ones are not up to meeting these challenges. It's not that we don't trust government, says the philosopher Russell Hardin. It's that government doesn't deserve our trust. The question is, how do we actually think about solutions that are about fixing our democratic institutions to make them both more effective and more legitimate at solving problems? We can do better than voting in terms of how we think about repairing our institutions. We can also do better than referenda, and that we need to create ways in which we can actually solve public problems more effectively. One of the ways that we can do that, and that many people are doing this, is by turning to the technologies of what we might call collective intelligence. Those technologies that help aggregate our human brains with machine intelligence to help us do things more effectively together than we can do alone. So, quick example, you all know Wikipedia, of course, as a great example of collective intelligence. It's that idea that we see now in countless platforms that are being leveraged for solving not simply the private problem of how do I learn a language, but public challenges. We can actually help our institutions to work better. The first stage in that process is always trying to identify what is the problem. The AI is very useful because instead of hundreds and thousands of comments, which you wouldn't be able to manage, it helps to organize the content into a discrete number of topics, and you can see how people are divided. Where is their consensus and where is their disagreement around what the problems are? Taiwan has used this process and these tools now to make 26 pieces of legislation, enacted law, on difficult topics like Uber and telemedicine and the online sale of alcohol, hard questions which have been deliberated with and debated with and worked out by citizens together with lawmakers. At the second stage in the process, we then still have to figure out what are the possible solutions to those problems. But we're seeing lots of this around the world. In India, where not hundreds of thousands, but millions of people are signed up for MyGov India, responding to challenges, coming up with solutions and putting them forward. And the government is responding, telling people how they're using their help, how they're using their solutions, and how they're implementing them. In Iceland, in the city of Reykjavik, 1/2 of the population is signed up for Better Reykjavik, and 20% are active users. Why? Because every month, at the end of the month, the mayor says, I'm going to take the top ideas, the solutions to problems, worked out and proposed by the public, and I'm going to implement them as policy. I'm going to implement them as law, and there's a guaranteed commitment to turn that participation into real solutions. In Brazil, they got the public not simply to propose it, but to actually go about writing the law and actually proposing what the draft should be. And then they've blossomed that into a platform called WikiLegis, where now anybody can propose law and draft law. And they've copied it in France, even in Germany, which is not known for its terribly open or participatory systems. So we're seeing lots of examples of using this for actually using these kinds of crowd law processes to then craft the actual draft of laws. We then need, though, to implement the solutions. Finally, the last stage, the stage we often neglect and fail to talk about, is what happens after we solve the problems, after we make the laws, after we make the policies. In the UK, they have a system called evidence checks, where they post the evidence around what policies are working online and invite people to scrutinize, to look at and criticize that evidence. So, let me say that there are, of course, challenges to doing this, and there are many. The first is that we're just at the beginning of so many of these experiments. A lot of these platforms depend on people to volunteer, to show up, to make proposals, to sign proposals, to annotate and comment on a draft. And that requires communications. It requires marketing. It requires letting people know about the opportunity to participate and making sure that we've targeted and identified people who want to participate and giving them the opportunity to do so. But even once they participate, we also don't know, as institutions, how to use the feedback that we get. When I worked for the Obama administration at the very beginning of the presidency, we had this great idea, I say great idea in quotes, that we would ask people for ideas for what our policies should be. And you know what? They told us. 84,000 people told us in 1 week what they thought we should do. And as a result, we did nothing with any of the information people gave us because we were not set up to use this knowledge. We didn't have a process the way they do in Reykjavik or in Mexico City designed to ensure that the institution is going to use the information. We also have the challenge that we don't know yet very well, and there is not great agreement on how to do the research in this space to measure what's working. We may measure how diverse the participation is, but we've never measured the outcomes. We've never measured whether, in fact, the hypothesis that these kinds of participatory mechanisms lead to better solutions to problems. So let me close by saying that there is a lot that we are already doing, as you can see all around the world, to begin to experiment with using new technology to engage with people, to use not simply their votes, not simply their feelings or opinions, but to tap their intelligence and their expertise, credentialed expertise and lived experience, to develop solutions to problems. And we have a long way to go to figure out what's working and how to do this well. We really have to be careful about designing the process, designing the platform to accomplish the goal. We have to experiment with online and offline processes, which is why I'm very excited about what's going on here in Madrid with the Observatorio de la Ciudad to actually create an offline citizen panel who will help to review legislation and policy created by the government and complement the online crowd law process offered on Decide Madrid. These are the future. These are the experiments that will lead us to a better, stronger democracy and better solutions to our public problems. Thank you.